While on a visit to Rome, King Herod stayed with his brother Philip and his wife Herodias. It ended up turning into a soap opera, with Herod falling in love with his sister-in-law, divorcing his wife, and marrying her. All seemed okay, until John the Baptist arrived on the scene.
King Herod and Queen Herodias are doomed, for they live in sin. They are not wed.
But, Master, they are.
Not under the law of Moses. Herod has broken the seventh commandment. He has taken another man's wife.
John publicly called out Herod and Herodias' sin, and they didn't like it, especially Herodias. What a nuisance this crazy man from the wilderness must have been. Herod sent soldiers to arrest John and throw him into prison. In a passage in the book of Matthew, John, from prison, sent his disciples to ask Jesus, "Are you really the one we are waiting for? Or shall we keep looking?" It is puzzling that John would question whether or not Jesus was the true Messiah. Shouldn't he already know? There are several theories. Some believe John became discouraged and was losing faith. Others believe John was expecting Jesus to be a conquering hero who would lead a revolt against the Roman government. And here was a man preaching about loving your enemies. What fun is that? Others believed John wanted his disciples to hear it from Jesus himself. And others believed that John wasn't sure if the Jesus he was hearing about was the same man he had baptized earlier. Perhaps an impostor was on the loose.
Jesus told them, "Go back to John and tell him about the miracles you have seen me do, the blind people I've healed, the lame people now walking without help, and the cured lepers, and the deaf who hear, and the dead raised to life. And tell him about my preaching the good news to the poor. Then give him this message: Blessed are those who don't doubt me."
Jesus made it clear, I'm the right guy. Everything he was doing lined up with what the prophets said the Messiah would do.
When John's disciples had gone, Jesus began talking about him to the crowds. "When you went out into the barren wilderness to see John, what did you expect him to be like? Grass blowing in the wind? Or were you expecting to see a man dressed as a prince in a palace, or a prophet of God? Yes, and he is more than just a prophet. For John is the man mentioned in the Scriptures, a messenger to precede me, to announce my coming, and prepare people to receive me. Truly, of all men ever born, none shines more brightly than John the Baptist, and yet even the lesser lights in the kingdom of heaven will be greater than he is. And from the time John the Baptist began preaching until now, many multitudes have been crowding towards the kingdom of heaven."
What did Jesus mean by the lesser lights in the kingdom of heaven being greater than John? In his earthly life, no matter how great he was, John was still just a human being, subject to sin. In heaven, people are sinners no longer. Everyone there will be greater than what John the Baptist was in his earthly life.
For all the laws and prophets looked forward to the Messiah. Then John appeared, and if you are willing to understand what I mean, he is Elijah, the one the prophets said would come at the time the kingdom begins. If you ever were willing to listen, listen now. What shall I say about this nation? These people are like children playing, who say to their little friends, "We played wedding and you weren't happy, so we played funeral but you weren't sad." For John the Baptist doesn't drink wine, and often goes without food, and you say he's crazy. And I, the Messiah, feast and drink, and you complain that I am a glutton and a drinking man, and hang around with the worst of sinners. But brilliant men like you can justify your every inconsistency.
Children in those days liked to mimic adult events, such as weddings and funerals. The children Jesus mentioned represented the people of Israel, not satisfied with whatever he said. John and Jesus were not the types that the people expected them to be. We don't know exactly how long John was in prison. He must have wondered why Jesus never came to bail him out. What he couldn't have known was that his ministry had come to an end.
Herodias wanted John killed in revenge, but without Herod's approval she was powerless. And Herod respected John, knowing that he was a good and holy man, and so he kept him under his protection. Herod was disturbed whenever he talked with John, but even so he liked to listen to him.
Then you would have another king in my place.
Yes. One who would rule with godliness, with justice and mercy.
You admit allegiance to someone other than His Majesty?
The one I acknowledge is above all kings on earth.
Then he is mightier even than Caesar.
He is the King of kings. He will make all the Caesars and the Herods tremble. He will raise the yoke from the oppressed, right all wrongs. Bring a day of judgment upon the evil masters of the world.
And who is this King of Kings?
He is the Messiah.
There are two eventful birthday celebrations mentioned in the Bible. The first was around 1600 BC, when the king of Egypt restored his butler but executed his baker, fulfilling a prophecy of Joseph. The second was a celebration for Herod, which would lead to the end of John the Baptist.
Herodias' chance finally came. It was Herod's birthday, and he gave a big party for his palace aides, army officers, and the leading citizens of Galilee. Then Herodias' daughter came in and danced before them, and greatly pleased them all.
The name of Herodias' daughter is never mentioned in the Bible, but many scholars believed her name was Salome. There are several notable dances mentioned in the Bible, including Moses' wife Miriam's dance with the women of Israel after the parting of the Red Sea, and King David's enthusiastic dance while bringing the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem. The most seductive dance, apparently, was the one by Herodias' daughter at the Herod birthday bash. In the 1953 epic Salome, the dance is done by the legendary actress Rita Hayworth. We don't know if Herodias' daughter looked like Rita Hayworth, but the king was very pleased. He said,
"Ask me for anything you like, even half of my kingdom, and I will give it to you."
She went out and consulted her mother, who said,
"Ask for the head of John the Baptist."
She hurried back to the king and told him,
"I want the head of John the Baptist, right now, on a tray."
The king was completely caught off guard and was now trapped. How could he explain not honoring her request?
Then the king was sorry, but he was embarrassed to break his oath in front of his guests. So he sent one of his bodyguards to the prison to cut off John's head and bring it to him. When John's disciples heard what had happened, they came for his body and buried it in a tomb.
From an earthly perspective, John the Baptist had a sad end, but his ministry on earth was done, his mission completed. He had spent roughly 3.5 years pointing countless numbers of people to the Messiah. And from Jesus' words, we know that the Lord was very pleased with him. He will be read about and talked about until the end of the age. When King Herod first heard about Jesus, he thought he was John the Baptist come back to life again. Some people thought Jesus was Elijah the prophet come back to life. Still others claimed he was a new prophet, like the great ones of the past.
No, it is John, the man I beheaded. He has come back from the dead.
Herod could not escape the guilt. John the Baptist haunted him in life and would haunt him in death.